Hello, and welcome back for another Simon Hurley Create video. This is Cassie. Today we're going to be using this very cool stencil. It's brand new, called Sweater Weather Stencil, and I want to show you two different ways to use it other than just ink blending. I want to show you a couple different products that you can use over the top of it. And this is sort of a two-step stencil, so we'll show you that as well. And then we're going to be using the very cool Snazzy Snowman stamp set. I'm so excited to use this one. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So I've got just a piece of cardstock. This is some white cardstock. I'm going to use my magic powder bag over the top of this because we are going to emboss it. And I have learned that just by trial and error, the best thing for me to do, especially with something that is a two-step kind of stencil like this, is to do color first. So I'm going to go ahead and put down some green, because that's the color of embossing powder that I plan to use. So I'm going to put down just a wash of green. I'm using fake plant. This is completely unnecessary, but I don't trust myself to actually get the embossing ink in all the areas. And if you do miss getting the embossing ink in the areas that you need it to, at least the fake plant will be down there. All right, so I did wipe off the stencil so that I don't transfer any of the green ink to my embossing pad. So this is just a clear sticky ink that I'm using. It's an embossing ink, and I'm going to make sure that I'm using my mini ink blending tool to push that ink into those crevices. So I'll pull that away, and then I'm going to cover that with some embossing powder that I have. This is just some stuff from Brutus Monroe. This is called, I think this one's Christmas Day. It's a green one. It does have little bits of red glitter in it. Yes, we're making a Christmas card. And so I'll cover that, and then once it's good and covered, I'm going to heat set that till that is smooth and melted. And you'll know that it is done. Just hold it up in the light. You'll see that it goes from a matte finish to a glossy finish. And it's perfect. So there are spots where I might have missed with the embossing powder, but because I put the ink down first, you really can't tell. All right, our next step is to do it again. And now we're going to line up the stencil. And I know this is a lot easier than I'm making it seem, but I'm just trying to line it up so that it gives you the second part. And when I get it where I need it to be, I'll just tack that down again with my purple tape. You'll notice I also tacked my paper down with purple tape on the back of it as well so that it doesn't move. And then I'm going to come in with some bee sting ink because my embossing powder that I'm going to use is red. So again, just wanting to make sure that if I do miss any area with the embossing ink, that I have it covered with at least some red ink so that it's not just not there. So I'll go over the top of that, and my stencil is shifting because I don't have it down very well. But, and I'm not going to go all the way to the bottom, as you can tell, because by shifting the stencil, I wasn't able to get the stencil completely all over this panel. This panel does measure 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. So I've got it pretty well. And then we're going to shift our stencil down, make sure that it's lined up. And again, this is probably, and it's not hard. I just don't know why I'm struggling. But yeah, now I've got it all lined up, and then we'll finish it up. And then we'll wipe our stencil just like we did before because we don't want to get ink transfer onto our embossing ink. And then we'll grab our embossing ink after I get all that ink wiped off, and we'll start pouncing in the embossing ink. And you'll notice I'll have to shift it again just to get that upper portion because I want to get, make sure that I have that completely covered by the embossing ink, and then I can cover it with my embossing powder. So, you wouldn't have to do this step. You could just leave it with the green and the red, and it's super pretty that way. But I just wanted to step it up a notch and add this. So this is called Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. No, this one's Christmas Eve. The other one's Christmas Day. I'll have everything linked down below. But it's just a red one, and it has some gold flecks of glitter in it. So I'll heat set that till that is smooth and melted as well. And then we'll make sure that we've got it all completely covered. So I've got to, once again, bring in the stencil and bring in the embossing ink over the areas that I did miss. And we'll cover it again. So finish all those steps. But this is a super pretty background just by shifting your stencil. And you wouldn't even have to do that if you didn't want to. You could just leave it plain. So the next one I wanted to use was Glimmer Paste. This first color that I used was Sapphire Blue. And I went ahead and put that down. My camera wasn't on at the time, I do apologize. So now you're just going to see me shifting my stencil to get the next color. So the next color I'm going to bring in is Blue Topaz. It doesn't take long for the Glimmer Paste to dry. Check your mediums. Some mediums take a little bit longer, but the Glimmer Paste doesn't take any time at all. So I will, once I get it lined up, I want to make sure that I have it perfect. I'm going to tack this down with some purple tape. Just making sure that it doesn't go anywhere. And I do have a stencil pal out. I think part of my problem with my Glimmer Paste is that it's starting to dry out a little bit. So I'm having to move super quick, which you'd want to do anyway. So as soon as you're done, which I'm spreading that across my stencil, trying not to go all the way to the bottom because you can tell I don't have the stencil on the bottom. But because it's drying quick, this is working in my favor and against me. So here I'm going to pick up the stencil and I'm going to plop it down, not really being concerned about where that overlaps, because I'm just not going to put any pressure up there. So I'll just bring it down. The stencil pal makes it that much easier. And then I'll clean up my mess, and you can see it didn't mess anything up. And I'll run this stuff to the sink and clean everything off. But yeah, this stuff is starting to dry out, so use your stuff, people. Don't let it dry out. All right, so let's take a look at those two backgrounds together. Here's our second one, and here's the first one we made, the first one with embossing powders and the second one with Glimmer Paste. I love how those turned out. Now we've got to stamp our images, so I'm bringing out my gigantic Misty. This is the scrapbook Misty, and the reason I'm doing that is because I do not want to cut my paper down. I'm finding that if I cut it down, sometimes I end up wasting bits of it, so it's just better for me to use the full piece and cut off what I need. So that's why we've got our scrapbook Misty out, and I'm going to ink up 2 of the snowmen and 1 hat using some Raven Detail ink by Brutus Monroe. It is Copic friendly. It's also waterproof. So we're going to use that, and I am stamping this onto our Stark White cardstock by Simon Hurley Create. This stuff is awesome for lots of reasons. It's nice and stark white, which is great, and it's usable in lots of different mediums. So once I get those stamped down, then we have to stamp a couple more pieces. So I forgot to mention that I used the Glimmer Paste on some Nina Desert Storm. And so I do want to match up this little snowman's scarf. So I'm stamping the part with his scarf down onto the Nina Desert Storm. And then I'll stamp the scarf part using some Remember Me ink. I didn't get it perfectly stamped on there, but it is close enough, and I am happy with that. And so then we have to stamp our little buttons on our other snowman. It's kind of like a decorate your own snowman, which is so cute. And then we'll start doing just some super simple Copic coloring. I'm in some cases, just like with this red, and I'm in the green and the orange, I'm only using one color, not even doing a color blend of any sort. And even for the twigs, just one color. The only place that I actually bring in more than one color is on the hat, and when I actually color some shadowing on the snowmen themselves. So I'll start off with some C4 for the hat, and I'm using flicking motions, going to keep like a white bit in the center-ish area, so that way it looks like the light is reflecting on this satin hat. Then I'll bring in some C6, and then I'm actually even going to bring in just a tiny bit of C8 to make it look like a black hat, and then I will blend all those out just using flicking motions. And then our hat will be done. For the twigs, like I said, we're just using one color, just a super simple dark brown. And I didn't write down the actual colors for the twigs or the berries or the greenery on the berries. But for the shadowing on our snowmen, we're starting with C3. Typically, I don't put down my darkest color, but in this case, I am. And then I'll come in with some C1 and blend that out a little bit. And then we'll do that on the other snowman as well. And you'll notice when I start to do the coloring on these snowmen, I am not going all the way to the edge. I've mentioned this before. That gives the illusion that the snowman actually is rounded and has dimension. So I don't typically go to the edges of things if I want them to look like they are a little bit more than what you see on the page. So then again, just flicking motion, blending that out. And then we're going to fussy cut everything out, leaving a little white border, except on our little scarf. We're going to cut that right on the black line. And then we'll attach it using some liquid glue. And voila, he matches his background. So you can tell which one he is going to go on. He is going to go on the Desert Storm cardstock. And then this little guy will be our Christmas one. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on his head to attach his hat. And then I will flip all these over and I will put some foam tape all over the backs of them. Now, keep in mind the reason we have to do something like this or use like a heavy duty glue is because we've got Glimmer Paste and we have embossing powder. I'm going to trim down both of the panels, and because this has Glimmer Paste, I have to use my guillotine trimmer on that one. My regular paper cutter won't work on that. This one you could do either way, but I'll just use it in my guillotine trimmer because, you know, I love this thing. And I'm doing this because I want a small white border and a small Nina Desert Storm border on both of those. I will attach these to their respective card panels after I've peeled off all of the release paper. And I love it because it does give even extra dimension on top of the dimension that the backgrounds already have. And then we'll stamp our sentiments. So I'm going to stamp one of the sentiments onto some Nina Desert Storm. And then I'll stamp the other sentiment onto some white cardstock, the Stark White. And then we'll trim those out. We'll put some foam squares on the back of those as well. So that way they're popped up and they're attached very nicely to those backgrounds, and put them right under each little snowman. And then we do have to stamp on the inside. So for the one, I am going to stamp a Christmas sentiment, which says it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, and I'll stamp that with the bee sting, just right on the inside of our card panel, or our card base. And then I will stamp, there's Snow Buddy Like You on the inside of the other one. And then we'll attach our card panels to our card bases using that liquid glue. And that just leaves a nice little border around each one. And then when we are done with that, that's going to finish off both of these cards. And I love how I used the same stencil and the same stamp set, and I ended up getting a Christmas card and a non-Christmas card. I love it. So we're already started on those Christmas cards. So if you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thank you so much for all the love and support you guys give, and for just being awesome. And I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.